And welcome to Punks in Pubs. My name is Liam Bird and I hope you are all well. Let's start by talking about the news. We have news. Punks in Pubs will be going to punk rock holiday in Tomlin, Slovenia. It kicks off on August the 6th. The lineup so far is NoFX, Descendants, Propaganda, Frank Turner, Sick of It All, Less Than Jake, Ignite, Pears, Pup, Mask Intruder, just to name a few of those motherfuckers. And like Pokemon, I'm looking to try and catch them all for this podcast to interview. Well, I say I'm going to catch them all, that's a lie. I'm looking to catch about 3 or 4 interviews while I'm there. We are poor as fuck. We can't afford the flights from London to Slovenia because they're around about £400 once you factor in travel and baggage and all that shit. So me and my friend Darren are going to drive. We are going to drive from London to Tomlin, Slovenia. We will be driving through France, Germany and Austria before we make it into Slovenia. I'm going to document this on our Instagram stories. You can follow the Punks in Pubs Instagram account at Punks in Pubs, where we will try and bring you what we're doing as we go through each country, and I'm sure shit will happen, bad shit probably, of car breaking down and all that kind of crap. Follow us on Instagram so you don't miss a thing, and I'm pretty sure you know what's about to come next. Please, 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 go buy a Punks in Pubs t-shirt. I can't stress how we can't afford this. We can't afford to go to this festival at all. I've spent all the Punks in Pubs reserve money on going to Berlin, which we're going to in a couple of weeks' time, to do an interview out there for Punks in Pubs. I really do need your support in this one. So yeah, we're driving because we can't afford it. We're going to be making a near 2,000 mile round trip in a car, which I'm not sure will survive. So please go to the Etsy website, type in Punks in Pubs in the search engine, and you will see our t-shirts there. Or click the link on your phone in this bio for this episode. Pick up a t-shirt that way and support us going to Tomlin so we can bring you some fantastic interviews. Just like we did last week at a festival that was a little bit closer to home. It was literally a 15-minute drive from my house. It was called Slam Dunk Festival. We went Slam Dunk South at Hatfield House. We had a blast. Thank you so much to Slam Dunk for letting Punks in Pubs be part of this year's festival. Me and my mates had a blast watching Turnstile, Bronx, Cancer Bats, Anti-Flag, Mad Caddies, the Menzingers, the Interrupters, NoFX. But there was one downside. I missed Bad Religion. I have a history of missing Bad Religion. Whenever they're over in the UK, I'll either don't have the money, or I'm at the wrong place at the wrong time, or someone just hasn't come through with a ticket. It's been annoying. So Slam Dunk was my time to watch Bad Religion. I was pumped, I was excited, and then I got an email a couple of weeks before, which read like this. Hey Liam, hope you're well. We would love to do this interview. We get off stage around 7 o'clock. Let's chat then. I look at the stage times for Slam Dunk. Motherfucker, fucking Bad Religion's on at 7 o'clock. I miss Bad Religion again. But this time, I actually don't care because I got the opportunity to interview one of the nicest guys in punk rock. His name is Joey Cape. Most of you will know Joey through his band Lagwagon, and I spoke to Joey in his tour bus. For anyone who is listening to this, who's thinking about starting a podcast in music, here's a tip for you. Avoid doing interviews in tour buses. I know this, but yet I still did it. We did it because it was the only place we could actually do the interview. Fucking tour buses, their aircon sound like jet engines taking off in your mic. Your ears will adapt to the noise of the aircon, but it is fucking annoying. I sent the audio off to a friend of the pod, Stephen Burke, and he had to play with it. He's dulled the noise a little bit, but it's still there, unfortunately. So again, apologies, your ears will adapt. Also, I'm going to apologise on Joey's behalf because Joey's mic skills in interviewing is shit. For a man who's a lead singer, you think he'll know whereabouts he needs to point the mic into his face, but he doesn't. He never really directly talks into the mic. I moved it once to be closer to his face, but he kind of gave me the look of, what the fuck you doing, motherfucker? So I backed away, so I allowed him to do his own thing, and unfortunately, to try for you guys to be able to hear what he's saying, sometimes I've had to push the gain up on the mic, which can make it sound like there's static in the audio. Again, your ears will adapt. Just deal with it. Also, while I'm in the mood for apologizing, I should probably also apologize for my own behavior. I listened to the audio and I can tell that I am drunk. I mean, come on. I was at a festival. The interview was at 7 o'clock in the evening. I'm going to have beers. You know I'm going to have beers. I'm not a professional. I mean, if you want professional people in your podcast, go listen to Turn Out a Punk. This is not that podcast, people. This is not that podcast. So let me quickly give you a little bit of a roundup on about Joey if you don't know who Joey Cape is. Randolph Joey Cape was born on November the 16th, 1966 in California. You will know him best as the lead singer of Lagwagon, whereabouts he has been the vocalist of this band since 1989 and is still going strong. Joey has an epic CV. He is a member of the punk rock cover supergroup Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. He was the lead vocalist of an experimental band called Bad Astronaut until they disbanded due to the death of 2 drummers. He's also released several solo albums, and he's got a new solo album coming out in July, I believe, called Let Me Know When You Give Up. Now you know a little bit about Joey's background. What did me and Joey talk about? Well, we talk about Game of Thrones. And if you've not seen the last season of Game of Thrones, skip ahead because we spoil the shit out of Game of Thrones. Skip about 5 or 6 minutes ahead, you should be safe there. Joey also reminisces about sneaking out of his bedroom window and going to punk shows as a kid and then getting a fuck knocked out of him in the pit and then having to go home and explain his bruises. We talk about Lagwagon signing to Fat. We also talk about the rebirth of punk in '94, quotation marks, where record labels were looking to pick up any punk band in the scene at that point in time. And Joey talks about a time that Priority Records, which I believe is Ice Cube's label, came to watch them play, and they left after about 1 song. Joey retells that story. We talk about the impact that Tony Hawk had on the punk community at the time, and we also talk about Watch Dogs 2, the computer game, because Joey actually does some vocal work in that game, and this leads on to Joey talking about how he would like to do some more voice acting work. We of course talk about the Gimmes, in particular the live album Ruined Jonny's Bar Mitzvah. We change the tone a little bit and talk about Bad Astronaut and the death of those 2 drummers, Derek and Eric. This leads on to us talking about the death of Tony Sly as well as mental health. And we finish up with news of Joey's new album and an announcement of a new Lagwagon record coming soon. As always, your band play out the show, and this week there are a band with members from Finland, Spain, Italy. They are based in Helsinki, Finland, and they are called Teresa Banks. You definitely want to stick around for that. But before that, there's this. I give to you my time at Slam Dunk, episode 59 of Punks and Pubs with Joey Cape. I will talk to you a little bit more after this interview. Enjoy.
Pandering to the small points, abortion, guns and creed.
We are at Slam Dunk Festival. We are not in a bar. We are in a nice, lovely bus. We have been offered drinks, but we've turned them down because my guest is not drinking. Joey Cape, why aren't you drinking, mate?
You know, just taking a break, having a little breather.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
No real reason. You got to do that every once in a while.
Yeah. So let's talk about the really important stuff, and I know that you are a fan. Game of Thrones. How did you feel, mate? How, like, it was rough.
I
Did you enjoy it?
Quite enjoyed the ending, and I know that's not a popular thing to say, but I thought it was kind of perfect. I thought it was poetic, yeah.
When you're annoyed, like, it just kind of, nothing matters.
You know what? Everyone is always going to be disappointed with the last episode of a show. That's just the way it is.
I would disagree. The Sopranos was perfect.
What's that?
The Sopranos was perfect.
Oh. See, I don't agree with that.
Oh, well, we've clearly got different tastes.
I found, I think the anti-ending that, you know, Sopranos, Seinfeld, you know, I understand why they do that, but that seems like it's almost in sort of in reaction to the pressure of a last episode. Whereas I thought Game of Thrones episode was pretty much, I thought the whole season was just about perfect. I loved it.
Would you not have liked it, though, to have been a bit more spaced out? Because it felt like we've all been talking about this White Walkers coming, and all of a sudden, one episode, done. Didn't you find that annoying?
Not really. It was an hour-and-a-half battle.
Oh, mate.
I mean, that's the longest in the history of television and film.
That's very true.
It was like Braveheart scene times 12 or something, you know?
Yeah.
I thought that episode was epic, and I love that Arya killed him because she reminds me of my daughter.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah, when I first started watching the show 8 years ago or whenever it started, my friends and I that know me well and know my daughter was about 8 at the time, or 7, and I kept getting these text messages, oh my God, Arya Stark, she looks just like Violet. And I was like, I know. And if she dies, I'm going to stop watching this show.
Oh, man.
I can't handle it, you know? It's crazy. So to see her, you know, kill the main White Walker was quite enjoyable for me, actually. I really liked that. I think that I went in with lower expectations of the last episode because I just watched it a few days ago. So everyone on this bus had already seen the entire season. Yeah. And I did the thing. I watched it in like 2 nights. I just binged it. Are
you still social then? Because I can't understand how you would have avoided the
No, I don't do social media.
I heard you quit. So.
But I do get notifications from certain news outlets.
Yeah.
And I do that. And every single time the word Daenerys came onto my phone, I just swiped it as fast as I could without taking it in. But I knew that, you know, which wasn't a spoiler because, of course, she's going to be heavily involved in whatever they're going to do.
What I enjoyed the most was everyone who had called their child Daenerys are now regretting it because she's mass murdered a lot.
Yeah.
By the way, spoilers. Mass murdered. Anyone.
By now, if you haven't seen it, you deserve to get the spoiler.
You don't care enough. You don't care enough.
God, that's
I'm
funny.
glad someone actually
hadn't even considered that. People would do that, name their child after. I should have chosen Arya.
Should have waited.
Yeah.
So you're a man who has been in literally, I'm about to say literally, and I hate when people go literally and then don't actually mean literally. You're a man who's been in many, many bands. And you've been in punk rock or the music industry for about the past 30 years, and we're going to come to that in a second. But what I would like to talk about quickly is, these are your own words, so this is not me slagging you off, but how you are the least talented person in your family, because your father was classically trained pianist, and your sister on right is also classically trained musician, and your brother is a jazz musician.
Yes.
How come you didn't go down
My mom can't sing a note in tune, though, so see, that's where it balances out.
Yeah.
I got her, I think, in the DNA pool. I got her genes, and there's relative training as well, you know, so you do something long enough, you can kind of get by.
Are you the youngest?
But there was, but there was definitely more natural, innate talent in my family, for sure. My father was a singer as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and, you know, I think part of the problem is when you're a kid, you have a higher voice, and even if you're meant to be a baritone, you sing in a tenor range, and then if you're lucky like me and you made some records, you have to live with those. So, you know, as you get older and naturally your voice wants to be in a certain range, you find yourself straining to keep singing the way you've been singing, and you know that probably wasn't great for my voice, but you know, I always looked at it as the thing that I'm sort of okay at is songwriting.
Well, you
that's really
better than okay, but yeah.
That's what I enjoy. It would have been just fine with me to be a writer for other people, you know.
Yeah. Have you ever been asked to do that? Like, because I know a lot of writers we get asked to do pop songs or something like that.
A lot of producing that comes up.
Yeah.
I produce a lot of records, and that sometimes there's collaboration. You know, there's always some collaboration with every song, and rewrites and things like that. But there's usually one song that I have quite a, you know, influence over, maybe even write part of, and I really like doing that. It's a rewarding. But you know, the singing thing, I mean, I hadn't planned on that. I was in a band, and the singer was a real jerk, and we were in the studio making a demo, and he quit in the middle of the session, you know, before the vocals were done, and then the producer of that said, "Oh, well, there's 3 of you guys, one of you can sing."
Yeah. And
we all kind of took a shot at it, and I guess I was the least horrible of the 3 of us, and so that was it.
Do you feel comfortable, like, being the lead, the
sometimes
singer? Yeah.
You know.
Is this something you had to train yourself to do, though? Or was it quite natural?
You do it long enough, I don't think much about it now. I mean, I don't get nervous anymore. But in the beginning, yeah, it was kind of tough.
Yeah.
I started on drums, you know. I mean, my brother handed me a pair of drumsticks when I was 8 years old and said, "You need a drum because I need a drummer." Yeah.
And what kind of music was that?
So I played jazz, you know, with my brother. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
And I you know, I wasn't very good. I was very young. I think I played till I was about 15, and then I picked up a guitar at 13, and I started playing guitar more and more because there was always one around, and I found it much easier to travel when I was moving with a drum set from a flat to flat, you know. Nowhere to play it. It just, after a while, it just seemed like too much work.
Are you making no friends in whatever building you're in?
No, you can't. You just can't.
Yeah.
It's only band practice for drummers, you know, if there's a rented space. And it's kind of shit, you know, but you could play guitar anywhere.
Yeah.
So that kind of happened.
So how come you didn't go down the jazz or classical route? Was it like, I'm going to rebel against what
what my brother and I did was more jazz fusion.
Yeah.
It was like jazz rock, you know, these bands like Colosseum was an English band. It was that we did more of that kind of thing. So it was a bit of a fusion thing. And yeah, I was into rock and roll, you know. That was first love, you know.
Yeah. But was it like Jerry Lee Lewis, like that kind of crossover from the jazz into rock and roll? No,
my parents would listen to the Beatles. My dad listened to a lot of classical music, but there was a lot of folk music on in our house, and those kind of singer-songwriter type bands, Simon and Garfunkel, Creedence, Clearwater Revival, and that kind of stuff was more what I was raised listening to, and a lot of the female singer-songwriters like Carole King. So I think I early on got kind of brainwashed into being a fan of song. You know, and there was definitely early doo-wop music that I just stuck with me, and then I heard the Ramones, you know, I went, oh, listen to this, you can do doo-wop like this. And then Motorhead, you know, and things like that. But I mean, you know, when you're a little kid, you want to spaz. I wanted it to be fast and heavy.
Yeah.
So,
but do you
metal and punk rock always made sense to me.
Do you think, like, as you've got older, though, have you noticed that actually the music that you were listening to as a kid with your family is actually it is, like, it's ingrained in me somewhere, whereas it's really wanted to come out now.
Yeah.
And this is the point whereas I'm now in my 40s. Like, I've decided that this is where I want to do music now.
All of my favorite records, you know, the records that I feel like have formed me as a songwriter, without sounding too pretentious, there's no good way to say that. They're all records that my folks listened to when I was a kid, you know, Elton John and things like that.
Yeah.
You know.
So when was it that you said the Ramones and Motorhead? Because I understand you were actually a metal kid before you were a punk kid.
I was.
So what was it about metal that you loved, and then how did you all of a sudden
go? You know, I liked the guitar solos,
crunching, yeah.
And I liked the heaviness and the speed, and you know, of course, and. When I was a kid, when I first started getting into punk rock in the late 70s, I liked it, but I didn't love it as much as the 70s hard rock stuff. And then I heard Motorhead, and they were kind of the answer, you know. They were kind of the band that they were metal and they were punk. You know? They kind of had this thing that nobody else had, and they were the one band that the metalheads and the punks shared, which is kind of funny, you know.
Yeah.
Lemmy did something right there.
Well, it's a mortal enemies, really. Metal and punk were meant to. They were meant to be like mortal enemies, like in the 70s, 80s, like metalheads and punks.
Didn't like the metalheads, and the metalheads thought the punks were stupid, and so on.
So when you went to your first punk show, were you aware of that? Were you like, I need to be quiet, that I'm not, like, people don't find out I'm actually a metal fan when you went to your first punk gig? Or were you pretty balls out? My first concert was an X show.
Okay, yeah. And they were a lighter version of those things, you know, so I showed up, I was surfing a lot then, and I showed up in like flip-flops, like, there was a lot of, you're not supposed to do this moments in my early years, but I was probably 3 feet tall, you know, or less. I mean, I was so small, nobody was going to pick on me.
Yeah. But, I mean, at that time, punk in California was quite a dicey scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
So were you literally that small that like you just weren't?
I was scared. I remember going to punk shows when I was 14, and you know, just being on the outskirts and watching people slam dance and thinking like, oh, I'm not going in there.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, it's kind of exhilarating too when you're a little kid, just the braveness of going to a show with all these all those guys in Los Angeles, you know.
Because I talk a lot about my first time I went to the pit, and I must have been about 14, 15. And it was scary as fuck, man. Like these big skinheads circling around, bashing into each other. And like you kind of touched on it. It was that excitement of, I might get hurt, but I might not. And I thought, if I survive, this is a fucking great story.
I mean, there were always circle pits, you know. In the early 80s, they started becoming circle pits. And once I saw that, I thought, well, this isn't too hard. You just got to move in a circle. As long as you keep moving, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
But it turns out that my face was right at elbow level for most people. So I think it's hard to remember, but I feel like the first time I went into a pit was at a Venice beach, you know, like these bands like Suicidal and Excel and Beowulf. And it was one of those Venice beach shows, and their fans nuts. It was a place called Fender's Ballroom that was, you know, notoriously like bloody, the shows. I mean, they were, and I went in the pit, and in no time at all I got whacked so hard that it knocked me out, and I kind of flew out of the pit on the ground, and I was all bruised up and everything, and okay, not quite ready for that.
Yeah. So you come home like busted up. Like, what were your family like? Like, why the fuck are you going to these shows? Or were they quite? They didn't know at all.
Sneak out.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I'd go into my room at 7 o'clock at night, and then I'd sneak out the back door and through a window, and then I would run down the street and get picked up by friends of mine that were old enough to drive, and we would drive to the shows.
I am just another fool, and I have to keep telling myself that I am just a hypocrite, and I have to keep calling you one, and I forgot to bite my tongue, as my assumption is the mother of all mistakes. So I assume the role, open my mouth, and grumpy words escape. So why you wanna be there when you could be here? You are slipping away. I awake with your replacement, a bottle in my grasp, in an unfamiliar place. 'Cause you put me out, the butter bunted joke, into this ashtray life as you come and go. 'Cause I forgot to service you, and we broke down, and you can't live with my mistakes. But I assume false grace, open my arms, and grasp at something true. How are ya? How have you been? Girl, I miss you, wanna see you again. Oh, why ya wanna be there when you could
quite young. So what band were you doing? Like music before that, or yeah? So what kind of music were you doing
before that? My first thing was with my brother, and then I had a band in 1980. I had my first band. We had the worst name. I think we were called Deathlock, or Cerebus, the three-headed dog that God said. It was a metal band.
Yeah.
And that was with a friend of mine, Jamie, and this guy Jason Sears, that later went on to be the singer of RKL. And I played with Barmer and Chris Rest, who's in Lagwagon now and has been for a long time. Chris, Barmer, and I were playing together, and then I was also playing with Jason in this other terrible band. And I said, I think I got the singer. And that's when RKL was born. I lasted about a week in that because I was always grounded by my parents. I was constantly in trouble. So I was always under some restriction, So I didn't stay in that band. But I had a number of bands. I went to college and I had a bunch of really terrible cover bands and played in punk bands and metal bands. And then I finally, when I got out of school, I had a band called Chemical, which was like kind of a crossover band, maybe a little bit like DRI or something, except we had like 10-minute songs and it was totally ridiculous. And that was the band that I started singing in because the singer quit when we were in the studio, and I ended up being the singer of that band. And that was the first band that I wrote songs for.
Yeah.
And this other band in town that we played with all the time was called Section 8, which is Lagwagon's first name. And their singer, it's a good story. I mean, my girlfriend started seeing him on the side and cheating on me with him. And I lived with a guitar player in that band. And one day I was just, I was like crying, completely smashed from this woman, my first heartbreak. And the guitar player said, "He took your chick, man. Take his fucking band, be our singer." And I was like, "Yes, I will do that." And so they kicked him out and I joined Section 8 and then changed our name to Lagwagon.
Oh mate, that's the best beginning story of any band.
And it's great because I'm still friends with those two people.
What I mean? Oh, that's nice.
I mean, they know the story.
Yeah. So let's talk Lagwagon then. So Lagwagon, early 90s, you were gigging. Can you remember the moment you were on stage and you looked around and you went, fuck, this band's actually going to do something? Like, we can actually tour this.
I don't, because in the early days, I think we were just so excited to even make an album, and then it was like the next album. Oh my God, we survived. We made another record. What I do actually recall is being on tour and, supporting bands that were bigger and maybe having a good show every 3 shows, and, you read a little criticism. I remember the first time we played in England, we played in Camden at a club that I can't recall the name of, and
probably closed.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
maybe it burned down. Who knows? But Camden. But a writer from Kerrang! Magazine came to the show and he wrote a review of our show. That was the first time we did like a headlining show in England, and he said, I don't remember the exact quote, but this was more what I recall of the early years is these kind of reviews. He said something to the effect of, "Well, if you want to have fun, this is a good band to see, just for fun. But if you're out to see something that's got longevity on its side, or is it all serious or something to take seriously, maybe this isn't for you." That was basically the review we got.
3 stars.
3 stars, yeah, exactly. It was the lukewarm, Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And I remember that was the first time that I was angered by criticism. And also one of the first times that I decided maybe reading criticism isn't necessary because you kind of have to stay true to what you do. And
yeah,
I basically have never read anything since. I just prefer not really know what people think.
I was going to say, was there a point where you were like, "Oh, just fuck all the other noise. Like, I know what we're doing. I know I'm happy with what we're doing."
Yeah. Well,
so was it like the early days?
Your purity,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been saying that forever. I think you have to just make music, and it's a collective soul of these 5 guys, for lack of a better term, and you know, you write songs, you get together with your guys, everybody puts their stamp on it, and it becomes what it becomes. And if you stay true to the nature of the band and the individuals in the band, that's the best you can do. And if things go your way and you're doing it that way, you're certainly going to enjoy your career more. It seems the only way to do it. I think to get at all caught up in criticism or what people think is really kind of not good.
I think that's great advice for all art, though. Like filming, even podcasting now. As long as you're enjoying it and you're digging it, and the people who you give a shit about is digging it, fuck everyone else. Like,
people identify with it as well. I mean, they see that. They see that your conviction. You know, if you do what you love, they can see it, and that's, for better or worse, the best. I think it's the best thing you can do.
100% agree.
If you're going to get any kind of individual, you know, sound, or any kind of art, I think you have to stay true to what makes you feel good, because that's generally going to be what you're best at.
So clearly, a man who's always kind of believed in you is Mike, Fat Mike, and in '92 you signed to Fat.
Yeah.
What was it that Mike said to you, or has said to you in the past, the reason why he has signed you? Because I've interviewed the Bomb Pops before, and they said that Mike was highly critical of them before he signed them.
Yeah.
Like, was he the same with you when he was younger, or was he a lot more let loose?
There was one, like he had one criticism. He thought we were too metal. Yeah. But he really liked what we were doing. I mean, we virtually come from the same, you know, ball of wax as No Effects. I mean, I'm older than Mike, and we come from the same part of the world, and I think many of the same bands that we both loved, you know. So it was more like we were peers. And when I gave him our demo tape, he just called me the next day and said, I love this, it'd be perfect for my label as a first release. And then I think he released like an NoFX 7-inch, so he cheated us of our flagship status. Although I always say, well, ours was a full length, so flagship band, damn it. But yeah, that was it. He just thought, he said, a lot of this stuff is really metal. Hey Joe, can you, oh, someone's out there, huh? I was gonna say maybe we could close that door, but I don't know if it matters.
I mean, it's all fine. The air conditioning is making noises, so it's fine. It's all good, man. So yeah, just kind of picking up on with signing to Fat, and then obviously '94 is a year where everyone kind of talks about the regeneration of punk music, because you had Green Day, you had Offspring, No Effects, Rancid, and yourself. But yourself, Lagwagon, your album, I'm going to have to read my notes very quickly.
Trash, probably.
Yes, came out in early February. So your album is actually just kind of like the one that, if you want to talk about it, it's like kind of kicked off the rest of them. Because
no, I mean, just by date, really.
Yeah, but for this purpose of this interview, I'm definitely pushing you as the the one that kicked off.
With me.
So like in '94, like was it kind of like, holy shit, where's this come from, or was it actually kind of like a slow decline, increase?
You know, I wasn't all that surprised, because the Nirvana thing had already happened, and I remember thinking when I first heard Kerplunk, the Green Day record, I remember Kerplunk thinking, this is so catchy. Reminds me a lot of the Buzzcocks, bands that I had already listened to that were power pop bands, and yet they kind of had their own thing. And I really was almost 100% certain that when they made Dookie that it was going to be huge. Yeah. Because there was a groundswell with them that was, you know, and the thing is it's very different than the world we were in. I mean, we knew them, we used to play shows with them, we did a tour with them before they were big, but you know, once a band becomes a mainstream band at that level, sells, what did they sell, like 10 million of Dookie or something? I mean, that's just automatically, they are not a part of our world anymore, not by choice for them or us, you know. I never had any problem with a band getting big and famous. It didn't matter to me if they stayed true to the music that I liked. But, you know, they, all of a sudden, they were, you know, a giant band. Yeah. So they're playing arenas, and we're still playing punk shows. And then the same happened for Offspring and then Rancid. And, you know, I just think it all kind of made sense, you know. Nirvana, I think, in a way, sort of broke down the doors, broke down the walls, I should say.
Yeah.
And then Green Day was just right on time.
It definitely
once that happened, so many other bands followed, you know.
Yeah. Because at that time, obviously, Green Day left Lookout, and they were put onto was it Madonna's label? Is that what it is?
Well, at first they signed to Columbia.
That was it.
And they ended up on Warner Brothers, I think.
Yeah.
But they actually made a demo tape that was circulating of 3 songs from Dookie that said Columbia Records on the cassette tape, and I still have it. It's like a green cassette tape, and it was not well produced. I didn't, and then I think they pulled a fast one. I think that right at the last, in the 11th hour, they went over to Warner Brothers, and I don't really know the story, but they switched labels after they had signed a deal, I think. So that was kind of a Sex Pistols move.
So at that time, there were obviously a lot of majors who started sniffing around because they saw money.
After that, yeah.
So what about you? Like, were you ever tapped up? No?
Yeah, there was almost a shark frenzy for a little while.
Yeah.
But the bands they were looking for pop bands, you know, and we were still pretty metal, and I think maybe a little hard, and we certainly weren't, I think, visually the right band, you know. We have a giant, we have a monkey, that's me, running around the giant in circles. I'm not sure that we had the look, and I really don't know why, but we were barely approached.
Yeah.
There was one show we played at the Roxy Theater on the Trash Tour, and a guy from what was Ice Cube's label called? I can't even remember. A guy from that label, you know, we had been told in advance he was going to come see the band, and talk to us about signing to the label. Priority Records, I think it was.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And this guy came to this show, and someone pointed him out to me before we went on stage, and I watched him watch half of a song and then walk out. And I remember thinking, good.
Yeah.
Because that made me nervous, and I did not want to have to reject anybody, you know. I mean, we didn't really want to do any of that kind of thing. That wasn't what we were after. I was always in touch with the idea that there might be more longevity and just less drama if we just stuck with what we were doing.
So in '94, was that the point where I actually realised this is actually now our job? Like, we can actually make a living out of this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We played 280 shows that year. And I remember being gone the whole year and thinking to myself, well, as long as I'm always gone, I don't have to pay rent for a flat, and I don't have to get a job. So how do we get an album out really fast and get right back on this tour? Because I'm homeless, you know. So I think that was sort of what all of us did for the first 5 years of the band. You know, we just stayed on friends' sofas and that kind of thing.
But you've been touring like since day dot though, like with either with Lagwagon or Bad Astronauts or your solo stuff. You're constantly on the road.
Yeah.
Do you think you're addicted to it? Do you think like you've got to a point where actually like, I don't feel comfortable if I'm not like in a different city or in a different time zone?
Well, there's a part of that that's true. I don't feel like addiction's the right way to describe it. I feel like it's more a matter of, you know, the old saying, a rolling stone gathers no moss. I think there's a feeling that I get when I'm home, when I first get home, where I sort of sigh in relief, and I like to be home, and especially since I had a child. But if I'm home for more than a month, I get a little itchy. You know, it just doesn't quite feel right to have the routine that I have at home. And it's not an addiction, it's more just a matter of, that's how I've learned to live, you know, for so many years. But the other part of it is, one thing that hasn't really changed is that I still do have to tour as much as possible just to make ends meet. You know, because I still don't have a real job.
Yeah.
This is my job. And once records basically stop selling, then tour, Yeah. And there were years that Lagwagon slowed down a bit, but I had this other band, Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, that was touring, and then I formed Astronaut. We didn't really tour. We did some shows. Formed another band, you know, started doing solo stuff. I mean, a lot of that was because I wanted to do different things musically and didn't want the band to change. I just wanted to keep doing what Lagwagon did best. But also, yeah, just being able to tour with multiple outlets, you know, for having outlets for that.
Touched on when record sales stopped dipping. So with being in music for about the past 30 odd years, music industry has changed phenomenally, from record sales to MTV now not really playing music videos to streaming, Spotify, iTunes. During that time, did you see holy fuck, something massive's changing, we cannot the way that we are marketing ourselves cannot happen anymore? Did you see that coming, or was it yeah,
I did, and actually it was interesting because I've always been into tech, and I've never been afraid of it, and very early on, I thought, with the birth of Napster, I thought, well, it's going to work itself out, but it's all going to change, and there's certainly not going to be anyone at the CEO's level trying to deal with this in time. So it's going to be an issue, but we've had a fantastic voyage and ride, and I feel nothing but grateful for that. That's the way I saw it from the very beginning. The interesting thing is it had a greater effect on much larger scale things. Bigger selling bands were hit much harder, much faster. Our fans were different. I mean, we kind of kept selling records for 5 years more than we should have. Maybe even 10. I mean, I feel like it didn't really get it noticeably different. It hadn't changed. It was probably somewhere in the early to mid 2000s when I thought, okay, well, here it goes.
I mean, something that you could not have seen was Tony Hawk. And the popularity of that video game had on the punk industry. It seemed to give everyone a kind of a vitamin C boost of everyone is now playing this game, so therefore they're searching out these bands. How was that for you? Were you what the fuck? Awesome. Why is our music selling all of a sudden? Out
it was
nowhere?
Shocking.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, this is a video game for skateboarding, which is, already had 14 deaths in my life cycle, in 14 cycles of death. Oh, look at this. Isn't that lovely?
Would you guys like pizza thingy? Here.
I'm good,
Little
man.
Joe's cooking.
Look at that. Check that out.
I bet. Yeah, he's quite good, actually. He's really good at that. He makes the best nachos. That guy.
Check it out.
Yeah, so that was surprising. And I just didn't expect it to be so popular,
Yeah.
But it was great. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, we never really made actual kind of high budget videos. We didn't solicit radio. We didn't do a lot of the things that a lot of the other bands in our world were doing. And that was just a really funny way to have a single. I mean, to this day, it's the most popular song in our set. We have to play it every show, and we got lucky. It could have been a song I really didn't like. You know, I kind of enjoy playing that song still, which is very strange.
But you've still got a history of video games. I understand that you're actually in Watch Dogs 2.
Yes.
How the fuck did that come
I did a
about?
bunch of the voiceover work for that. I spent 3 to 4 full days in their studio doing voices for it. And I've never played the game, so I don't know if I actually made it into the game. But I did more than one character, and there's a part where I whistled May 16th. They wanted me to do that. The character walking along whistling May 16th. I'm guessing none of it actually got in there. But
I've never played the game. I've never played the game.
Yeah, I don't have a machine, so... And when it came out, I think we had a PlayStation 2 or something for my daughter when she was really young, and it wasn't available for that. We didn't have an Xbox or maybe it was an Xbox, but we had like the first generation one anyway. So I saw it and I thought, oh, wow, I should buy it. And then, of course, it didn't, you know. I didn't want to buy it.
Put it in, didn't work.
Yeah,
What the fuck?
But I think we got a song in it.
Yeah.
I was supposed to have a solo song in it as well, but I know that didn't happen. It was interesting. It was a bit of a failure because the first Watch Dogs game sold something like 40 million copies. So it was huge. And they had fully expected this to be Ubisoft, the company. They're a Montreal-based company, but they're worldwide. The producers that I work with told me, yeah, this should be one of our biggest selling games. And I thought, oh, this is so great. Maybe I have a job here. Because I really love doing the voiceover work. It's so fun. You know, the first day that I worked on that, they had this studio with multiple rooms, and I wasn't allowed to see the other people they were employing because they had it was a lot of security issues. I had to fill out these papers, sign all this stuff about non-disclosure stuff, where I couldn't speak about it, couldn't talk about it until the game was released. Wasn't allowed to meet the other people. So imagine there's these people on microphones and I can hear them in my headphones and they're in the building. And we're basically doing a play.
Yeah. That's weird, man.
So fun.
Yeah.
I loved it.
So is like vocal work something you like to do? Like doing, there's a lot of adult cartoons right now going on.
I mean, I would love to do
Mr. Pickles is probably the one that I think everyone kind of metalheads really enjoy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I like that. What's the one that they're always watching upstairs?
What's that?
On the Netflix one, the cartoon show that they've been watching upstairs a lot. What's that? Big Mouth.
Oh, Big Mouth. That was fucking
Big
hilarious.
Mouth is good.
Man. Smart as well.
Yeah, it's
really
great.
smart about puberty and how he goes about talking about it.
It's just awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a lot of fun, but that game did not do well, and I haven't gotten any calls. So I guess that was my career in voiceover. I don't know. How do you make a resume with one gig? You
had
know?
a shot, man. You had a shot.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep moving on because I'm very aware of time. So Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. I've heard interviews where you spoke about Me First, Gimme Gimmes, and then you were like, how the fuck is this band, who is meant to be like a gimmicky band, is selling more in regards to Lagwagon than what I'm doing with this covers band? Like, were you legitimately pissed off?
A little bit. I mean, of course I'm in the band, so I was, I had mixed feelings.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a small part of me that thought when we put out our first full length, and it sold this X amount of copies, and it outsold the latest Lagwagon album in like a month or something. I thought to myself, but this isn't even real music. This is a cover band. But, I guess if you look at the people that were in the band, we had a Foo Fighter and we had a guy from NoFX, and, it was, actually Chris joined the Foo Fighters later, I think, but it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're fun records. I think people like the records because they're fun to listen to,
They are fun.
Yeah.
They're a giggle, man.
And hey, I'm not complaining.
It
was
going, man.
right on time.
Yeah.
Just about when things were getting real tight, I had another income, which was nice, so I could keep doing what I do.
I have to ask about one of the albums though, and that's Ruining Johnny's Bar Mitzvah.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Was that literally someone that you knew was doing a bar mitzvah, and so you got invited?
His father, I forgot his, David Wixon, ran a publishing company, and his publishing company, Wixon, I think had done a sort of deal with Fat Records, like where they were collecting for them or something, you know. I mean, that kind of thing happened a lot back then. There would be a separate entity dealing with publishing works. And I guess Jonny, his son, really liked our band.
Yeah.
And so he asked Mike, would you be willing to pay my son's bar mitzvah? We'll pay you this or something. And then we all talked about it and said, yeah, cool. And then Mike, to his credit, had the brilliant idea of making a live record and doing totally different songs that aren't on any of the records. The part about sort of ruining the bar mitzvah, I think that just happened naturally. No plan. I think there were a lot of old people there that were in the back plugging their ears. It was a venue not meant for music. It was incredibly loud. It was all hard surfaces, and it was just, I remember when we were playing, just looking at these grandmothers and grandfathers in the back, like plugging their ears and just going, what in the hell is happening? And then we had all these little 13-year-old boys, you know, sort of slam dancing in front of us. It was hilarious. Yeah.
So whose idea was it just to keep the recording going? Like throughout, when you had your break, it just keeps going? Because that for me is just fucking amazing in the album.
You know, I don't know. We recorded the concert, and there's actually quite a few songs that aren't on the record that we played that I think we released maybe online or something. You know, I just don't know. We got the film, we got the recorded footage, and maybe Ryan Green, who was out in a truck, he was in a camper outside of the thing, you know, recording it. You know, he had lines coming from stage going outside to this little camper he had that we rented. And maybe he just forgot to press stop. I don't recall why that happened, but the charm and the beauty of that record is the actual things that are happening. Hey, everybody, the ice cream bar's out. You know, I mean,
it's amazing.
It just blows my mind. I mean, I can still listen to that record and laugh.
Yeah.
And I remember being there and looking over at my wife several times throughout the set, looking at her and just going, what the hell is going on? What is this? What are we doing here?
Let's talk a little bit about Astronaut. So they're a band that, if I'm completely honest, I've discovered from researching for this interview, and it's a band that I've really enjoyed, and
cool.
And it's a band that obviously has stopped because of tragic circumstances.
Yeah. We've had 2 drummers since Derek, and another one of them overdosed, and yeah, it just seems a bit cursed. It's like Spinal Tap. It's not a good band for drummers.
It's clearly not.
No.
But something that I do try and talk about a lot in this podcast is mental health and how it's played its part in what I'm doing, and also in the punk genre in general, because obviously Tony Sly is a huge part of it, and it's been a huge part of your life.
Yeah.
For yourself, how have you, obviously 3 deaths must have played a huge part of your own mental health and well-being. How have you dealt with that personally? And is it something that you're aware of now in the punk community, whereabouts people try to embrace people to talk a lot more than probably what they might have done before?
Well, it's a tough question to answer, and at least, you know, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I know that there's been a lot more deaths than the ones that you know about. And I think it's just part of the deal. This is a kind of lifestyle that we live where there's a lot of drugs and a lot of people are drawn to it that maybe already had mental health issues. Pretty sure everyone in my band does, and it's just part of it, you know? I think, you know, the first time that you lose somebody that you really love, it's obviously the most difficult. And the next time it's still just as difficult, but it's different. And the evolution is not so much that you become a sociopath, it's more a matter of the wisdom of understanding your process of grief. I don't know. But they haven't gotten easier. Tony was the hardest for me, and that's the latest. Well, there's been 2 or 3 since, actually. It's amazing. I don't know. It's just, yeah, it's just part of it, I guess. It's not a great answer, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Difficult to answer.
There's no right or wrong answer, really, is there, with your own... Because it's easy for someone who has maybe sat and thought about it a lot, and they've structured it into having an answer. Whereabouts I think someone who doesn't really have an answer is probably the most honest way of talking about it, because it's not black and white. It's so grey, and talking about your own mental health, and then also, as you said, like you're got a band, so you got a family, so you're all kind of looking out for each other's mental health, but you also don't want to pry into what they're doing. You don't want to go, hey mate, don't do that, because then all of a sudden you're the father and you don't want to be that. So there's no right or wrong answer, I don't think, when
something interesting about that you just touched on is the one thing that I have seen is my immediate family, my actual family. When there's a death in my family, I sort of naturally fall into a role of counsel. And it's perhaps because, you know, I've been so close to this kind of loss so many times that it's just, I have some understanding maybe that others don't. I mean, normal people don't lose more than a few people in their life other than the elderly, you know? So when someone dies far before their time, in a normal person's life, it's lifetime of devastation, you know, and that probably would have been true for me if had there only been one. But after some time, I mean, just kind of find a way to honor them by carrying on the memory of them, by speaking about them and writing about them.
Well, in your career, I mean, like, Tony's clearly played a big part, because you went solo with him on a record that you did. Do you think you needed someone like Tony to kind of help you kind of go, do this alone, like leave the band alone and go at it?
Without sounding, you know, arrogant, I think it was the reverse. I think I had already made a record, and then Tony and I did the split. I didn't release it though. I just had already been doing that for a while, and it's natural for a songwriter to play an instrument by themselves to write, you know, so I think it's something that most songwriters do anyway. But I think I was very scared when I first did it. The first time I played in Texas at a thing called South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. And I remember that show vividly. I mean, I remember I sat in this chair in the middle of this bar. It was packed, this pub with just the gills, and I was in this chair, like, so awkward. I don't even think I had a guitar strap, you know. And I was shaking, and I was really nervous. But I think there's always the fear of making something bad, you know, or doing something that you shouldn't be doing. And I think Tony and I know that he felt that way when we first started doing it, because, you know, we grew up listening to things like Simon and Garfunkel, and, you know, I was a huge Elliott Smith fan. There were all these people that I worshipped, you know, singer-songwriters that had been doing that, and that was their thing. And here we are, a couple of guys from punk bands doing this thing that maybe we shouldn't, you know, maybe we're not supposed to, but it's just a natural progression because that's how you write.
Yeah.
But once you do it for a little while, I mean, you find this freedom, and that's addictive. This thing where when you're playing by yourself, you're not coordinating with others, so you can, on the fly, you could change the key of the song. You can change the tempo at any given moment in the song.
Yeah.
If you are emoting a song and you're playing it on acoustic, you can literally stop on a chord and then sing a line without a guitar back, you know? And sorry, I got some in my lungs. Yeah, so that kind of thing was so appealing to me, and Tony and I talked about that a lot. So once you do it, you're kind of in.
Yeah.
It's hard to leave it.
So kind of that fraternity must have been like Revival tour for me is one of the tours that I wish would come back, and I wish Chuck would start doing again, because obviously you played a part with Frank and
I did about a week of one of the tours in the States.
How was that? How was it like being surrounded by creative peers? And
it was weird because there's a lot of throw and go stuff on that tour. Like you don't really get songs in advance to learn. And there's a lot of this kind of, you're good enough, you can do it, just come on stage and start playing. And that's not something that I really, now I would be so much better at that. But I was always more of the rehearse and rehearse and rehearse until it's perfected as it can be, and you know, for me. And so to go on that tour, and there was just a number of songs that we were going to play every night that I didn't even know. I had these little paper plates, and I wrote cheat sheets on them in a Sharpie before the first show, and I had like a stack of them, and I was like trying to kick them, and then I finally resorted to just turning my mute tuner on, and just, there were like 12 people on stage, so why the hell did I have to be in the mix? I just muted my pedal and just pretended to play. That was my trial by fire the first night of that tour. But, you know, it's a cool thing. It's good for you. You know, I think Chuck's another one of those guys who've been doing that a long time, and it's really natural. And, of course, Frank Turner, you know, he's a natural.
I mean,
that was a cool tour. I mean, it was the first time I met Frank, and we got along well once we spoke. You know, it was a few days on the bus, a little bit awkward, but then we started talking, and he's a good chap, good guy, bloke.
Good bloke.
He's a good old
mate.
bloke. Yeah, good mate.
So another good mate of yours who has been on this part, Chris Cresswell.
Yes.
I listened to his podcast that he did with you. And very, very warm, very fun. Clearly you two got on. But something came up which kind of freaked me out. And you seemed so cool about it. And that was about losing your teeth. Like I think you spoke about chewing gum and then teeth falling out.
Yeah.
For me, that is scary as fuck. Like, because it's the only part of your body you can literally see fail on you.
Yeah.
Like, literally, fuck you, I'm off.
Yeah.
And then it's gone.
Some people have eye phobias, teeth phobias. I've had, they look fine, but I've had really poor, you know, teeth my whole life. They just, I've just about every tooth in my mouth is either fake or had a cavity or a root canal or something. And I have so many dead nerves. I mean, just a week ago, I was chewing the gum, and one of these molars over here broke in half. I just keep getting them repaired in Europe because it's cheaper out here. I've got 2 dentists in Germany. Yeah. That's my thing. And I just try to deal with the pain until I get back to Germany, and then I go see a dentist. I got to get this one fixed in June when I'm with the Gimmes.
Do you let a bit more loose in Europe because you realise if I fuck something up, it's practically free. It's fine.
Maybe. I know that very early on in touring in Europe, I realized that, I'll say Germany again, but in certain European countries that there seem to be less rules. You know, I remember hanging out at this bar in Kreuzberg in Berlin called the Franken, and that was like the first, that's where our agency is based, there in Berlin, and in Kreuzberg, and this bar called the Franken was like a regular thing for us then. And I remember being in that bar and just drinking, like the band would drink like 100 shots of Fernet Branca, and then we were like doing things like lighting the bar on fire. I mean, like a table in the bar on fire and each other on fire and fights, throwing chairs, just crazy shit that happened that would never ever be able to happen where I'm from. You would get arrested, but people would just be laughing. Those crazy guys, you know. So in the early days, yeah, a lot of wild times.
Yeah,
it was so fun. But you know, we're pretty old now. We're all pretty mellow now. Most of us come back after the show to the bus and put our pajamas on. No joke.
Man, why not?
Yeah.
So I'm very aware that we haven't spoken about albums, because we got like Hoss, Double Platinum, Hugely Love, Let's Talk About Feelings, Blaze, Resolved and Hang. But we're coming up to an hour, so we haven't got time to do all that.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your solo stuff very quickly. You about to put out an album, Let Me Know When You Guys Give Up.
When You Give Up.
You Give Up, sorry.
It's okay.
So that's coming out in July.
Maybe it should have been You Guys Give Up. It's a little more casual.
It's a little bit relaxed, isn't it?
Let me know when you give up, guys.
Guys?
I like that.
So that's coming out in July or June, right?
July. Yeah.
July.
Yeah.
So are you going to be coming back to the UK and touring that, or is it going to be...
I am doing... I already had booked a tour before we decided when the album was coming out, and the album is a full band album.
Okay,
There's
nice.
drummers on it and whatnot. And,
Yeah.
And I have a 2-week run, but there's no UK shows. That it was just like a little tour I got offered that I decided to do, and I'm just doing it solo, performing solo every night. And I guess I'm going to try to do renditions of the songs on that record without a band, which should be interesting. It's a little bit weird, you know. I mean, it should have been a tour with a band, you know. But that's really difficult to do on the money that I make on solo tours. I'm not sure if it's anything I'll be able to do. I guess it just depends on the way things go. But I'm really, really happy with the record. I think it's my favorite. It's definitely my favorite solo album that
I feel like everyone has to say that, though, when it's their new one.
It's true, but I mean, I knew when I was writing it that it was something special for me. You know, I had this great concept. I just had this great synergy, the whole record, with the people I worked with. And it just was so easy.
Yeah.
And when it was done, you know, everybody involved was like, holy shit, this is a great record, you know, and it just felt great because, you know, we're sort of meant to make worse music as we get older. I think that's a thing. I think you can make that argument by citing many of the most famous, you know, writers of all time. They get a little soft. And this is not heavy music necessarily, but I think I'm writing better than I've ever written now. But I could be wrong. But it's okay because I'm the only person I care about, you know? I'm happy if I'm happy. And I feel that way about the new Lagwagon record. We just finished a new album too, and it's great. I'm really happy. So maybe a lot of people say that, but I don't. You could probably find a quote from me when an album came out where I said, it's not very good. I'm sometimes the opposite of the reasonable promoter.
You're the PR.
Yeah, I'm not a good PR person.
Yeah.
I'm definitely more often told by the publicist to shut my mouth.
Well, let's end the podcast there with just you telling yourself to shut your mouth.
Yeah, shut up.
Thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, no, pleasure. That was great.
Excellent.
Love it.
The loudest in the room are now rewarded. The academics gone into hiding. They can't control their students or the thought police. The new Newsweek, Orwellian dream. The debate is now controlled, show trials and shaming. Immediate feelings over future. The solitary fight of simply being right. Pick a tribe or scripted side. Peace of mind in a picture from afar, like a satellite, like a satellite. Worlds apart from the natural bazaar, like a satellite, like a satellite. And I say right, division has won, and I say hate, the death of debate, and I say
Joey for giving up so much of his time. Joey's new album, Let Me Know When You Give Up, is available to pre-order now on Fat Records and will be released on Friday, July 5th. Go pick up a copy and support a good dude. Also, a shout out to Slam Dunk for letting us come and hang. Make sure you are there next year. Their lineups are usually pretty solid. Keep an eye out on their social media at Slam Dunk Music, and while you're at it, make sure you follow Punks in Pubs at Punks in Pubs across all social media sites. Like I said at the top of the show, we will be going to Punk Rock Holiday and we need petrol money. So please go pick up a t-shirt, £15. You can pick them up at Etsy. Go to the Etsy site, type in Punks in Pubs in the search engine and go and support the pod. Or click the link on this bio where it says buy a Punks in Pubs t-shirt. Don't have the cash right now? Then don't worry, brothers and sisters. Just go and tell your mates about the pod, either face to face by using your mouth or via social media, or why not ping someone a link to the episode via WhatsApp. Let's wrap up this mammoth of an episode and introduce the band who will be playing out the show this week. They hail from the happiest place in the world according to the World Happiness Report, because that's the thing. Finland, Helsinki. They are called Teresa Bank. If you're going to Rebellion this year, they will be playing that festival, so keep an eye out for them. They're also going to be doing a short tour in the UK in August, so if you're based in the motherland, make sure you go and watch them. If you're based anywhere else outside of the UK, keep an eye out. They might be playing your way soon. This track is called Strike the Match. That's it for this week. As always, if you go into a punk show and you see someone fall down, you pick them right back up. Until next time, bye bye.